Hey, Mike, thanks for joining me and
Hey, Dave.
looking forward to chatting with you today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So, welcome everybody to my latest podcast. With me today is Mike Inman, and he's a managing partner at negotiationtraining.com by TableForce. So, hopefully, I got that intro right.
You did.
And
Thank you.
if you've been on LinkedIn and you've seen some of my likes, you've probably seen Mike because we interact a decent amount on LinkedIn. So, really excited to get Mike on here today and start drilling in with some questions, talk about negotiation a little bit. So tell me, Mike, let's get started with just a little bit about your background. How long have you been doing the teaching negotiation thing?
So the teaching, we just calculated for 14 years, and I just crossed over the 10,000 hour Malcolm Gladwell outlier
Oh yeah.
for just teaching negotiating.
Did do you get a guru title now?
No, no, and I try. You've seen me. You are what other people say you are. There's all this branding out there, and that's great. And the fake it to make it crowd, that's great. But when someone else says, "Ooh, that's an expert," that's when you're an expert. And by the way, they need to have a credible reference point. There's a lot of people who say, and I get this in our reviews. I got a whole bunch of reviews right here. We do it after every class. Best class ever. And I go,
Yeah.
you don't know that. I love the fact that people feel that way, but you haven't taken all the other classes, so you don't know.
Yeah.
But they're excited and they want to make me feel good, and I do feel good.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what I've done that's racked up to 10,000 hours. I'm sure there's some things like TV watching. I don't know. But that's pretty cool. So you actually track 10,000 hours. And I have read the Outliers book. Great book.
Yeah.
Love that one. Yeah. So that's cool. Well, great. So, you know, tell me a little bit about the TableForce and this negotiationtraining.com. Can you give me a little background on the company and,
Yeah.
you know,
So I'm a former client of TableForce. I think that's important because when I left corporate America, I had choices, and I'll talk about joining TableForce as one of those. It's a laser focus on negotiating. I actually helped them pick the name when I wasn't in the company. They sent out a survey to key customers, and they asked about some names, and they being Bill Garcia and Mark Kensick, who we've lost, um, came back with TableForce. We want to be a force at the table, at the negotiating table.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
was kind
so
of
when
thinking that was had to be some connotation of that
There
because
you
the
go. And
idea
we,
of
when we
negotiation is,
rebranded, some of the logos had a table around TableForce.
yeah, I did have my binder, but I don't see a table there. So I did bring my binder to
There you go.
this, to the podcast.
And everybody know
I,
we're
I,
still teaching because it still works.
yeah, I never leave home without it. No, just kidding.
Thank you.
so, so let's talk about like this pre-negotiation class. Like, so what was it in your career that kind of got you into this idea that you could do something different? Maybe talk about your background. I think it was purchasing is kind of where you
Yeah, in
started.
purchasing, and I started in purchasing. I was the quintessential abusive buyer, and I'm a little
Never,
ashamed to admit it.
I don't know any of those. If any of
not
my
not your first
customers,
rodeo.
yeah, if any of my customers are watching this, I just want to say you're all wonderful.
There you go. I started at General Motors, so I had a very large, a small project with me would be $14 million.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I had some leverage in terms of dollar volume. And I had been a seller before that and had been in sales, moved over into purchasing, and I knew how to, I'm going to use this word carefully, to manipulate salespeople. And I would do things like when a seller would call in to check on their quote, I'd say, without even looking at their quote, I'd say, "Are you kidding me? You're way too high." And then later that day or the next day, I'd get a phone call and they would say in a high stressed voice, "Hey, Mike, you were right. We checked with finance and we sharpened the pencil and we were able to reduce our bid by 8%. How does 8% sound, Mike?" And
Yeah.
I'd
So
say,
did you track that 8%? Did you mark that down when it happened?
uh,
When the
uh,
first move? Or
"No,
did you just
no.
wait till the final move?
This is when I was uneducated. I was immature. I was
Okay.
abusive. I'm just
Okay.
going to get what I'm going to get. I'm going to take
Yeah.
things from you." So then I'd say 8%. Are you kidding me? You got to be double digits if you're serious about winning this order. Or I'd call in a I'd call a meeting with a supplier that had no shot at the business, someone that was new to the market, that was weak and desperate, and I would just take, 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 take. Then I would call in after them a meeting with the supplier that I actually wanted to do business with, and I would say, "Hey, I've met with your competition, and if you can't give me all this stuff, you're going to lose this order." and I was really good at it. I won awards for that type of behavior. But here's the problem. This is where my road started. That type of negotiating doesn't help anybody in the long run. General Motors drove hundreds, if not thousands, of suppliers out of business with those type of business practices. Quality still suffers. Their reputation still suffers from the end of the Lopez years, where the supply chain just beat up suppliers. Suppliers stopped bringing innovation,
Yeah.
and that hurt
There's no
General
room.
Motors' quality. Yeah. There's no room. There's no margin. And we did this a couple times that I'm aware of. I didn't have the stamp, but if a supplier would deliver drawings with their mark on the stamp, we would take our stamp over their stamp, and say this is now property of General Motors.
Oh, wow.
What are you going to do about it? Right, and it's really bad. So what I woke up one morning and I said, you know what? I cannot be this guy. It's just it's not something I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I started to learn about negotiating, read books on negotiating, took classes like the one I now teach on negotiating. And from that point forward, I went from a buyer to a manager to a director in the GM system, moved over to America West Airlines, which is now American Airlines, where I had all the indirect spend. So I went from manufacturing direct spend to indirect spend. Moved over to a company called IAC Interactive Corp, which is a holding company in New York that owned at the time Match.com and Ticketmaster, Expedia, industry leading companies. And my last job before joining TableForce was at MGM Resorts International,
Yeah.
50,000 hotel rooms on the
That's
strip.
the one I
Yeah,
remember from the class. I remember you talking
yeah,
about that one. Yeah.
right. And so I guess what I tell people when I'm doing a session, I say, if anything I say doesn't make sense, I want you to stop me, because chances are I just didn't explain it correctly. I know this stuff works because I personally used it. Communications is not what I say, it's what you hear.
Yeah.
So if you disagree with something, I give you full permission to stop and say, Mike, I don't understand, or I think you're wrong. Got it. There are exceptions. Nothing. If anybody who tells you they tell you 100% truth 100% of the time, they are lying. I mean, we all have little secrets we hold back,
Yeah.
and nobody is perfect about their advice, but there are exceptions to rules. I try to talk about most of the people most of the time. So I give them full permission. Stop me, and I will re-explain with a different story. But if I don't know that you're not connecting, I can't help. And there's nothing more that I like helping people.
Yeah. I think, and it goes back to what we were talking about before we started about marriage too. Communication is so challenging. I think we almost always underestimate that the message is received the way we transmit it, right? And there's plenty of books I've read about that too. But it is
Can
an
I can I
interesting
can I tell a story
concept.
about that?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so I was at General Motors. I had a mentor. Her name is Cindy Bevel, and we're at a work party, and she pulls me aside and she says, "I just talked to Justine. It's my wife now. At the time, we were engaged." And I said, "Yeah, what'd you think?" And Cindy says, "Not what I expected." And I said, "Well, what did you expect?" And she goes, "Well, you know." And I said, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." And she goes, "Well, you know, you're like a beach volleyball guy, and well, I kind of expected that she'd be a bimbo. She's really smart and got depth. That was the high line, smart and
Yeah.
got depth." So I hear the voice in my head says, I'm not good enough to get a woman who's attractive and smart and has depth.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
share
Yeah.
the story with my wife. She immediately says, "Oh, Cindy doesn't think I'm pretty?" And I said, "No, no, 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 she never said that. The story is about me." And she goes, "Nope, that's girl code. It means that I'm not pretty." I said, "You're out of your mind." So I told that story a month ago. We got a friend we're close with that she's a bartender. I told the story. And Dylan says, "Oh, yeah, that's girl code. That means you're not pretty. Or she doesn't think you're
Yep.
pretty." And I'm like, "No, well, we heard something different." Um,
Yeah.
Cindy has profusely apologized. I know in heart of hearts she did not mean it that way. She truly meant it as a compliment.
Yep.
It just depends on who you tell, and when you tell them, the voice in our heads is so strong.
That's a great story, and I guess you've told it enough times now that this won't get you in trouble for bringing it up here
Oh no, I'll
on
be in trouble. It's
on.
Valentine's Day. It will be, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, I have some questions here, so I'm just looking down my list. We've covered a few here. So, you know, when you got started in the training, so we talked about like everything up to it,
Yeah.
right? So then you get started in this training. Um, did you have some
Life of an
rocky roads at
entrepreneur.
first? I mean, you went from kind of this purchasing role to then actually like having to tell people how to do this stuff. did you have a struggle with it, or
I,
did you just kind of ride right in with it? I mean, how was
Dave,
it at the beginning?
I negotiated for 6 months with people who taught me to negotiate before I finally said yes to joining TableForce.
Oh,
And my
okay.
biggest mistake was I didn't say yes on day one.
Hmm.
I thought there's that old saying, do what you love and the world takes care of itself, no problems. I thought I loved procurement.
Hmm.
It turns out I liked it and I was competent at it. So I had a great career on that side, but I love what I do. If my passion hasn't already come across, shame on me. I wake up every day. I work on Sundays. My calendar will allow people to book a meeting on a Sunday night because I have clients in Australia.
Yeah.
It's their Monday morning. So to the young people of the
So
world, really find what you love.
so why do you like it so much, Mike?
I get to help people in their careers and in their relationships.
Yeah.
I'm compensated very well for what I do. Let's not kid each other. I don't do this for free. If you're doing it for free, it's a hobby.
Yeah, we're not talking about
It's
the money, and
yeah,
I didn't imply that, but I think that was kind of the question is sort of targeted at that age old thing, and I've always said in the parts of my career where I've had chances to do training, and it's been part of my job. I've always enjoyed that piece, right? I think
right.
that sharing what you know with others, there's something pretty fulfilling about it, and especially like you said, if it changes their life, if they can actually use it somehow, and you know, it's like in this negotiation thing, it's and I'm going to just digress here a little bit because I meant to say this earlier when you were talking about how you felt as a purchasing person when you I think there was a question you threw out like right at the beginning of the class that had to do with like what do you think of negotiation or what's
Yeah, that's I
negotiation
start
mean to
every
you,
class.
right? And I remember thinking to myself, I hate negotiating. I hate it because I feel like I'm going to be that guy, the guy you described as the jerk in the, in the purchasing scenario where if I demand, if I'm a good negotiator, I'm going to get everything I want. Right. And of course, the course of the class, I learned that that wasn't negotiating. Right.
Yeah. If you
So
get everything you want, you haven't asked for enough. The other side should say no, you can't have that. If they say
yeah,
yes, then you've all lost an opportunity.
yeah. So it's, it's, it was a good training. I need to go through it again as a
Right.
refresher. So for sure, that's got to be on my list to do. So let's talk about the training. That leads us right into the next question. So, if someone came to you and they said, "What's this training going to encompass? What am I going to learn?" Can you give like the summary of that? I mean, tell
Yeah.
us about it.
So we're an 80-20 rule classic company. 80% of what we do is training. The other 20% is actually real world negotiating. Of the 80% training, 80% of that is a 2-day workshop. And I have people, maybe you were one of them, who go, oh, 2 days, you got to be kidding me. I have 300 emails a day. I don't need this. Not my first rodeo. I've negotiated before. I've gotten this far in life without training. Why can't HR just leave me alone? I just want to go do my job. Totally get it. I love those people because if I can take a person who doesn't want to be there and get them to the boat case at noon, I now bring them in and
Yeah,
I help them go, oh my gosh, I'm not as good as I thought I was. There's that, what's the phrase, unconsciously incompetent?
yeah,
You
hmm,
don't, you never really know if you're really good. In our classes, in the role plays, you get to see your side and their side, which in the real world you never get to see. But in a negotiating
yeah,
class, you get both sheets of paper,
yeah.
so
And I
they can
know
see how they do.
for those who are listening, I'm not going to give too much away, but the boat case is one of the first. I think is it the
It's
first one? Is
it's
it
the
the
first
first
one
one?
that we do,
Yeah,
and it's in person on the personal side. It's not a business negotiating. It's not
yeah,
B2B,
yeah,
but we don't let them do B2B yet. The, if people negotiate more in their personal lives, they will be a more confident negotiator in their professional lives, and it is a confidence game. So we get
yeah.
them comfortable negotiating.
It is interesting. So the confidence thing, I'd like to just ask about that for a second because I think confidence in life is something that a lot of us struggle with, especially in our early career, right? And you probably experienced it. I know I did, and I can't say I'm ever always confident, right? But I'm at a point in my life where I don't fret as much about some of these things as I used to. I used to think about what everybody thought of me. In the negotiation, I always thought they're going to think I'm a jerk if I ask this for just this one thing. I always kind of had all these mental sort of flags that went up that sort of stopped me from doing some of the negotiation things I learned in the class. So, I mean, you see that too, right? Confidence
Oh
is
yeah.
is like,
I do have a different take. I think there are a lot of people, this fake it till you make it mantra that's out there. Not as much recently, but for the past couple of years, I think that's a false confidence, and that can hurt you, and that can be come across as arrogant. I do think you need you need to have credibility. You need to earn your stripes through getting better deals. What's better mean? Well, if you have a pool of 8 salespeople on the team and you're closing deals at 18.5%, and your peers are closing deals at 22, you're not a good negotiator. Yeah, you're closing deals, but you're lagging behind your peer group. When you start
right.
getting better than yourself yesterday, be a better you tomorrow than you are today. And when you start rising to the top of your peer group, when you get promoted and your boss says, Dave, I like the way you operate. Your coffee is for closers. Have all the coffee you want. We love you. Now you have a person who oversees 8 people, who sees every deal, identifying that you are a better negotiator.
Yeah.
So I would
Well,
say that's a big thing.
yeah, I had a little confidence, overconfidence, and this is a good story that my kids always love to bring up with me. But it was uh, it was before the class, so I'll get put that in there.
Okay.
Um, I told my kids I was taking my kids down to New York City, and they were a little bit younger. I think they were like young teenagers, or maybe just a little bit younger than that. And I was like, hey, a
Big
lot of
enough to
things
cause
in
bigger problems.
yeah, I was like, a lot of things in New York City, like depending on the street vendor and stuff, you can negotiate. So I was like, it's kind of fun sometimes if you try this. So the first thing I did, we actually stayed in New Jersey, and we took the PATH train into the World Trade Center, and this was when it was still being reconstructed. It was mostly up, but it wasn't finished, and it was raining this day. So the first thing I needed was an umbrella, and I tried to negotiate for an umbrella on a rainy day, and like this vendor basically was like, "It's raining, like
Right.
you need the
And for you, it's
umbrella."
double the price.
Yeah, I know. I almost yeah. So I paid full price, and my kids, because I actually told them, and this is probably the piece I missed of the story was I said, "Hey kids, watch this, right?
Right.
Fake it till you make it." Went into the negotiation, totally paid full price for the umbrella, and they
But you
never let me live it
tried.
down. Yeah, I did.
And most people don't try.
Yeah,
And anybody who tells you they're really successful most of the time, all the time, they are lying. I
yeah.
am not. I don't win every negotiation. I just try more than most, and I have access to more tools, techniques than most.
Well, and we talked about this before, but everything you do is a learning experience, right? So we always kind of tend to focus on the failures as such a bad thing, but that umbrella failure is one that's I go back to a lot, and I think about, okay, where I didn't have the leverage I thought I did, but maybe if there was a two street vendors, right, I could have been like, okay, I'll go over to that one, right?
Right. On a sunny day, but tomorrow
Yeah,
it's going to rain.
yeah,
It's So this is what I tell people about negotiating. It's situational. Markets can change very quickly. COVID, right? Woo,
yeah,
everything's clicking along with the economy, and then everything gets shut down. Can't even Doesn't matter what price you want to pay. Can't get parts.
yep. Yeah, supply chain has made a whole different scenario for business. It's I feel like it's getting better in some places, but still not back to normal. That's for sure.
Yeah,
So I don't know if that's what you're hearing too, but
it is. And I'm
so
hearing hints of deflation. There are areas in the commodity base of manufactured parts where deflation is already present.
yeah,
And the question is purchasing going to go on the offensive and try to claw back the price increases that they gave 2 years ago, or are they going to wait for the supplier to come and say, hey, by the way, we're making too much money, so here's some back, which, by the way, never happens.
yeah, yeah. So do you have any stories to tell about like any success stories from people that came out through your class? Did you
Yeah,
have anything like that you can share?
yeah, and so it's tough. I'm under
We won't mention any
confidentiality on a lot of
names.
them. Yeah,
Yeah,
so I'm gonna
yeah,
scrub the names at the end of day one. So in the morning we talk about personal negotiating. In the afternoon we slide into business negotiating, an easy, light business negotiation. Talk about win-win, defining it. We talk about the power of no, and we talk about a 4-step process that gets people comfortable trading concessions. At the end of the day, I ask two things of the workshop. Number one, what did you learn today that made you go, I can use that? And that helps me be a better instructor. We do more of the stuff that people say those are great, and we try to minimize the stuff that people say, yeah, that didn't work. And so 27 years later, we've got most of the people picking something that worked. And then I say, now here's your homework. Before we start class tomorrow, I want you to negotiate something. And I don't care what it is. But then I say, well, I do live in Colorado and I've been to Amsterdam. I don't want HR called on us. But negotiate something that you can talk about in class. Start a negotiation. Failures are okay, but I want to hear a homework story. So the next day we come in. This is over in the UK, up in Manchester. COO is in the class, comes back and says, well, last night I just got us an extra 60,000 pounds, 60 grand
Right.
for my homework. Mike, how'd I do? And I'm like, absolutely. You just paid for the whole class. We
Yeah.
don't charge 60,000 for a whole class. You just paid for the whole class. My expectation is a return on investment. That's immediate. They're not always like that,
Yeah.
but we've had clients measure us and they say, we're going to measure you. And we say, please do. And they go, really? We go, yeah. And they have a big spreadsheet and they're tracking deal points and they're tracking value, all the things they should be doing. And post class, they'll have one or two or three people in the first negotiation they do. It might not be the same day. It might take 3 weeks to get that negotiation across the finish line. But they come back and they go, we're going to stop tracking because all these people paid for the whole class just through their one negotiation. And your former employers is one of those that tracked
Right.
us. So yeah, that happens. I had a person in your space, a young kid, 26 years old probably. I didn't check his records, but around that age, do an $80,000 revenue improvement from the sales side just by saying yes if. Yeah, we can do that if. I need more share of wallet. I need more line items. I need more volume. I need another year on the deal. The yes, we can do that if. And he just said, I just kept saying yes if, and they just kept saying, sure, no problem.
It is amazing. And we just tend to say in sales, we just get so laser focused on winning that order, we just forget. So it's a
You're
good
not
reminder.
alone in that.
Yeah, it's just a good
So
reminder.
we did a thing called the buying game, which is about how it identifies buyer behavior. There's 30 clues that buyers give off that a seller is either has the business or they don't. And what we tell people is if you don't have the business, get approval, but test that.
Yeah.
Ask your boss, hey, here's the 30 clues. Here's why I don't think we're going to win. Do you mind if I start to walk away? Start to say things like, wow, you've got that deal from somebody else. Ooh, you're a great negotiator. I'm afraid we're not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to waste your time with another proposal. So if you need me, you can call me, but I'm out here. If something fails, but things like that to test why, well, test the reaction of the other side. If they won't let you walk, well, then maybe you misread the clues. Maybe they actually want you. And on the other side, there's those 30 clues can be read that they actually want you. And now you're negotiating from a position of power and leverage that they want to do business with you. Now you can give less, ask for more things in return.
Yeah. I need this class again, Mike, for sure.
Our rates
I
are
need it now
reasonable.
more than ever. In my last role, I wasn't as customer. I wasn't an account manager. I was more sales support, but I got to go to the class, and sometimes I would be involved in the negotiations. But most of the time, that was the account manager. And
See,
so
Dave, I think people
now
like
I'm in a
you
role where
have,
I need it like all the time.
right, but people like you, if you're paying attention, have tremendous value to bring back to the sales lead negotiator and say, hey, listen, here's what I heard from engineering. The budget got approved for $350,000. What? Purchasing's telling me it's only $250,000. Yeah, I know, but the guys, people I take donuts to, said it got approved for $350,000. Got it. Now the negotiator knows that purchasing is just trying to squeeze them.
Oh yeah, yeah. Got the inside track right.
Yeah, because
So
purchasing knows not to be too transparent. Engineers don't know. They're just trying to take the budget that originally got whacked. It was 400 down to 350, and they're just trying to buy the best stuff for 350 they can. So they're telling you, hey, if you can just improve the warranty, give us a better specification, give us an upgrade, whatever it may be. There's 350,000 out there. Let's go spend it to make the engineer look good because they're measured differently than purchasing.
right. So you brought up a couple points there, and it made me think. So like it again, and you know, you and I talked about this earlier too, like listening and really trying to observe are I think almost like some of the things we forget, right? We kind of go in, and I think this was when I was reviewing the binder. I think this was don't like you make assumptions. There's some assumptions that you make that just kind of kill you if you just go in with those assumptions and just don't test them, right? Like it's you need to test your assumptions.
Right. That old saying, don't make assumptions because it makes an ASS out of you and me. Wrong.
Yeah,
It is wrong. You should make assumptions, but you should test those assumptions. And you can
yeah,
even say one of the things that I do is I try to be direct. I don't teach anybody how to be rude or impolite or disrespectful, but there's a way to be polite and direct. Hey, Sarah, sales role Sarah, would it help you to have a long-term deal?
yeah.
Be quiet.
Question,
Now,
question. Yeah,
she's going to say, yeah, we love long-term deals most of the time. So my assumption is correct that it has some value to her. I didn't say she's going to get a long-term deal. I'm just trying to understand her sheet of paper. Now she
right.
comes back and says, Mike, we don't want to lock up capacity. We've got a really big project going on, and long-term deals actually kind of hurt us in this situation. Ah, okay. So now we have to scale it back. So now we can't grow the pie. We can't make it as a big long-term deal. That's okay. But at least I know not to assume that and present that as, hey, look at this value. I can give you a 5-year deal. Like, we
Yeah.
don't want a 5-year deal. Stop pushing. Knowing where the levers are on the other side is helpful. Now, if they say, nope, we don't like long-term deals, and they don't say
Yeah,
why, they
you're
don't have a
good at
good
acting
rational.
this out. I think you've seen this happen in real life too many
Not
times.
not
Yeah,
my first rodeo.
yeah,
So now you go, okay, so is that a sales tactic? Did they defend against Mike asking the question?
yeah,
And this is one of the difference between a crisis negotiator and a business negotiator. A crisis negotiator is going up against a person who doesn't have a lot of negotiation training, or doesn't have a lot of negotiating experience, and has probably
mhm,
never been trained. So that's a harder negotiation than what I do. Most of the people I negotiate against, teach, have had a lot of experience, three
yeah,
years to 30, and they've had some level of training, even if it's a lunch and learn, it's a video. They've read books. So,
sure,
Chris Voss, labeling. I got into it on LinkedIn the other day,
yeah,
and the author had said something about the difference between manipulating and negotiating, and I chimed in my opinion, and they didn't like my opinion. It was a counter narrative opinion, and the person said to me, "It seems like you have a problem with crisis negotiators." And I said, "That's called labeling. And now you've just treated me like I don't know my business."
yeah,
So now, had I wanted to get my nose out of joint, I could have, it could have hurt the relationship. I was just trying to have a discussion. I was just trying to learn. So I didn't. It didn't really hurt me. I try to live by that saying: "Sticks and stones will break our bones, but words will
yeah,
never hurt us." There is nothing another person can say about me that hurts me. I haven't experienced it in a long time. When I was a child, yes. As an adult, no. But it didn't really bother me that she said it. It was the fact that she treated me like somebody she's trying to walk off a bridge, which is again highest calling.
yeah,
But she didn't realize my sheet of paper and have empathy for my position, which was I know all these tactics, and they're very much less effective when the other side knows it's being done.
yeah. That's an interesting. I didn't think about that perspective, but it really is true because I mean, um, a lot of times when you're not used to negotiating, a negotiation tactic can become personal real quick. Like you're all of a sudden like, oh, they're shutting me down. Like right away, I'm getting shut down in this deal. But sometimes that's the walk away test, right? They're walking
Right.
away. They're just trying to see if they walk away, if you're going to chase, right? It's kind
Right.
of,
So in software purchasing, my advice to the buy side in that is, and it's kind of silly, but start with free. You want a free trial, you
yeah,
want free implementation, you want your free, because some salespeople aren't as strong and they're weak. I didn't say you're going to get free, but start with free. The software is already coded; it's already in the box. By the
yeah,
way, AI is coming; it's going to take all your coders' jobs. So give it to us for free.
yeah,
Now, a weak salesperson will say, this guy's out of his mind. No, and go away.
yeah,
And I'm like, no, that's my opening position. You're supposed to say free, you're out of your mind. Nobody gets free. How about if we, and now you're supposed to make a counter to my counter.
Right.
But if they're not experienced, they'll they won't pick up on the dance we're supposed to do. My job is to ask, seller's job is to defend, and vice versa.
Right. Yeah. So I think you've hit on a lot of things, but is there any one tip? If I know we talked about a lot of different things, any one tip that you were saving that you'd share for, you know, I guess negotiating? I think
Yeah,
I've heard
I'm
you
gonna.
say on one of your other podcasts. I think I heard you say. So I was wondering if it was going to be the same one. But go ahead.
I'm branched it out, so I am going to say something I've said before. I don't want to just. I mean, when we teach in our 80-page book, there's 30 tools and techniques. I like to think of a negotiator like a carpenter. They've got all these tools, and I know what a pliers look like, and I know how to use them. I know what a screwdriver looks like. I know what a hammer looks like. But if all you have is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail, and you've built a really funny looking house.
Yeah.
So there's different things that I tend to gravitate toward. One of them is, you probably heard me say, we have to try more. That salespeople are told by their boss, go get an 8% price increase. Here's the letter. We're going to send it to every customer. And the sales guys go, don't send that letter to my customer. They're going to yell at me.
Yeah. And we're going to lose the
But the CEO
business.
says,
Right.
well, I'm the CEO and I'm going to send the letter out. So the letter goes out, and then the salespeople, they call up the purchasing person and they say, hey, you probably got a letter. You probably got an email. I'm just trying to get out ahead of this thing. We really need to get that 8% price increase. And the buyer will say, 8%, you're out of your mind. And the seller will go, we're not fired. That's a good thing. And they'll go back to their boss and they'll say, hey, we tried to get that 8%, but the buyer said, no, that's not trying.
Yeah.
If you can't approve 8, who can? I want to talk to your boss. I want to talk to your boss's boss. I want to talk to the end user community. I want to talk to finance. I got to have something. Oh, so you don't have to get 8, Mike? I need to get really close to 8. I'm not saying it has to be 8, but I got to have a discussion with somebody. It might be 6 and I get an extra year on the deal. It might be 6 and I get preferred payment terms. We'll negotiate it. I am
Yeah.
willing to negotiate with you, but I got to talk to somebody who's empowered to negotiate. That is trying in my book. So there's that. And then they're planning to negotiate. I think a lot of people think that you got to be flexible and entrepreneurial and you got to be sharp and witty to be a negotiator. And you do to be an effective negotiator. But that's the 20% of the pie. The 80% that goes into the planning, who's going to be in the meeting? What are we trying to accomplish? Where is the meeting? When is the meeting? These things go part of the plan. Don't let life happen to you.
Yeah.
Take control.
So with that thought, my struggle with the plan piece is always when it goes off. You kind of have all these things lined up, and then all of a sudden you step in the room or you get on the phone, and it just goes sideways. Like everything you kind of planned is like out the window, and you're just like, I didn't write a plan B. I didn't write a plan B for this. So, and that actually recently just happened to me, but it was a tough negotiation, and I,
Right.
I can't say too much about it here, but it was crazy. I knew I had like no leverage in a situation, and I was really trying to figure out like where to go with it. And I literally went through the whole plan in your workbook again. I read all through the book, and I was thinking of like all these high points, and I'm like, okay, but I got on the phone, and it was one of these situations where there was already like some tension involved, and when the person answered the phone, it was I could tell they weren't even happy to hear from me. So it was
Right.
a big challenge,
Was this a
but
Zoom call or a phone call?
it was just a phone call. Yeah, just a phone
Ooh,
call. So
because so that's really hard. I really don't like phone calls because you're blind to the body language.
yep.
If I go silent on you on a phone call, I could be just playing a game. I could just be messing with you.
Yeah.
Versus here, if I go silent, I could be off camera doing something, and now
Yeah.
oh, I don't have Mike's attention. It's because he went out to get coffee. But those are two different reads on the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. It is true without the facial.
Now,
And you
I
know
will
what?
say
But
this: my order of precedent. I used to say be in person at their location. I want to see them in their office. I want to see the pictures on the wall. I want to see what books they've read. I want to build out that profile. Then my location or neutral site. Then I would go down to in the recent years down to Zoom, then down to phone, but then I say text. There's something immensely personal about texting in a negotiation because
Mm.
the only people that you text with are your friends. So even though there's even less information from a context perspective, it shows that they are willing to treat you in a manner in which they treat their friends and family. Does that
Interesting.
resonate?
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I said that
We'll have
I
to.
switched up. So we had a client that we did price increases for him, taught him how to get price increases. And they measured and they came back and they said, we found some interesting data in our measurements. We found that people who conduct real world negotiations with the client did worse than people who did them on Zoom. Why is that? And we were like, what? Huh. So we did some interviews, and that's what we found. People who did real world negotiations did their plan, got it approved, went to the client, put it in their briefcase, and they negotiated. The people on Zoom did their
Mm.
plan, got it approved, and they would take a yellow sticky note, put it on their monitor, and when they're negotiating the mini part of their plan, it didn't have all the details, but the most important stuff was front and center, and the other side didn't even know that they were following their plan like that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, hey, a lot of good stuff here. So the bottom line for you is, and for the audience, I should say, is
Yeah.
sign up for the class, right? And
Yeah.
while we're finishing up this piece of the interview, because I do want to talk a little bit about LinkedIn. Um, I guess go to the website, reach out to you
Yeah.
on LinkedIn, right? That's the best way to find out about the class.
There's a lot of bots on LinkedIn. I have a standard process I go through. If somebody reaches out to me that I have no connection with and they don't put a message in, I say the same thing. Thank you for reaching out. How may I be of service? And most of the bots just go away. Then there are the people who come back to me and say, hey, Mike, I saw you on this podcast. I saw your post, whatever it may be. And those people I connect with. So, I think we can all learn from each other from learning about the algorithm, the more people that follow you. I'll tell you, Dave, there's some people who give decent advice with no experience at all. If you look at some of these influencers' bio, they've never done the thing that they're advising on. I'm not saying that it's not right advice, but I'm saying they don't have the credibility of actually knowing that it works or having used it themselves. They just saw it and they put it in a fancy little clip and punched it out there and people like it and it resonates with them.
Yeah,
So I like to, look up people. I think it's disrespectful if somebody looks at your profile and you don't look at them back. Or if you're having a meeting with somebody, absolutely look them up. That's a part of your negotiation plan. It's to me again, it's disrespectful. It's their personal billboard. And if I ignore a billboard they've chosen to put up freely,
yeah,
right? That's not very nice of me.
yeah. So let's talk about LinkedIn a little bit. So my experience is that I definitely get more. I definitely get more views on videos that I do myself. So even these little podcast snippets, sometimes they do good. You talk about the algorithm. Sometimes they do good. Sometimes they're kind of like a really slow, because I have the sales navigator and I can track the views and kind of see who's looking at them. So not the people, but kind of categorically, right? And so it's interesting. They do kind of ramp up over time, but the ones I've done where I've just done like my own video, just me and the camera, and talk about something. Those ones, the algorithm seems to just push out there, and I get a lot of views on those. Comments, getting people to interact with a post seems to be just hugely challenging. Like, um, and you're a person who's put tons of posts out there. Like sometimes I wonder, like, okay, is there a limit to like what's too much, And then I think I bet Mike's just kind of like he's like in constant experiment mode. Is that a little bit
No, so
about?
I'm not tracking and experimenting with the LinkedIn algorithm. I'm a lifelong learner. I like to learn from other people. I believe in diversity of thought, that if two people can disagree respectfully, politely, that there will be a learning that comes either to one of them or both of them or someone else if we have these discussions. So when I see something that I disagree with or don't like, I will try to frame up a question that is going to get me more information. That's interesting. Where did you come up with that theory? Where did you come up with this idea? Now, there's a lot of people who don't like to be questioned,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
they will shut me
I have
down.
to admit, I've seen a couple of your posts. I know there was one that it just kind of pricked me the wrong way. I think I made my statement on that was, this is probably a year ago at least. And I was like, I'm going to frame up my thoughts on this and try to put it in the best way I can. And then I watched a couple other interactions between you and someone else on a LinkedIn post. And, I was like, okay, it's tricky because you're sort of in the public eye and you don't want people to start like hating you, but yeah, it is interesting. And I think it leads to why a lot of people don't make comments because they're terrified that something they say is going to set somebody off in the wrong way, or and so you get like real high level light commentary on some of these things,
Yeah,
not everybody, but that's what a lot of them are.
yeah. So, and that's my I don't have cable TV. We cut the cable years ago. It's my entertainment of choice. I'm learning while I'm being entertained. And if I'm not with a client and I'm doing some emails every 15 minutes, I need a mental break from doing my emails, doing my proposals, working with the client. So on my breaks, I go to LinkedIn and I see what's going on, and I see really, really excellent thought leadership, and I try to follow, like, share those people. And then I see advice that just doesn't make sense with me, doesn't resonate with me.
Yeah.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
that I'm right, and I'm not saying the advice is wrong, but I always wonder, where'd they come up with this?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a story that's a fable about Max Planck, and you've probably seen me post it. I've regurgitated a couple of times. So it's not my story, full disclosure, and I did look it up. It's not on Snopes, so we don't know if it's real or not. It's probably not real, but it's about Max Planck, the German physicist who won the Nobel Prize, and he was giving a lecture series. And different parts of the story go different ways, but he was feeling under the weather one day, and his chauffeur said, "Well, I've seen you deliver the speech 30 times. Why don't you let me just deliver your speech?" And Max Planck was like, "Oh, okay, knock yourself out." So the chauffeur gets up, delivers a speech, and somebody asks a question. And sharp chauffeur says, "I'm surprised in a city as sophisticated as Munich that we would get such a simple question. The question is so simple, I'm going to let my chauffeur, Max Planck, answer the question." And I see this a lot. I see people who can't or won't defend their own statement, answer the question about it. And I
Yeah.
go, what don't you? Because the algorithm, to your point, the more interactions you do, the more people who like and share and comment, the higher up in the algorithm. You are missing an opportunity to use the algorithm to get more likes by interacting with me, and you won't do it. Why?
Yeah. And I've been perplexed for a long time about why people do not interact more. I just feel like it is a good opportunity, and I've advocated the social selling book. You've probably seen me talk about that and seen the
Yep.
posts on it. That book is really good. I actually haven't finished that book, and I'm going to go back and start over again. It just it really
Is it
makes a
Tom
point.
Boston? Is that his name?
It's
That's a sales guru.
Timothy Hughes.
No, no, not the
Timothy
book. There's a
Hughes.
guy named Tom Boston that I follow who does these
Oh,
great videos. They're funny, they're educational, they're the life of a salesperson kind of thing. But he
yeah,
plays like all the roles. Like he's got the hat on, and that's the boss, and he's got a
yeah.
bald head and another one, and he plays all these different characters. But he really frames up the life of a salesperson really well. How hard it is, how laughable it is sometimes. That you're just working so hard to get
Yeah,
ahead, and you just can't do it.
but we're all, like, if we're doing most anything, a lot of us are doing some form of sales. Even if you're an engineer in a company and you think, I'm not involved with sales, you're going to get pulled into a meeting that's a negotiation or something where, you have to show that
Oh
you
yeah,
can do what you need to do for the customer, right? So I think we all have to, you know, what's difficult, and I really like this social selling thought, is that, nobody wants to feel like they're being sold to. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I do get those unsolicited messages in LinkedIn,
yeah,
I mean, if like, I'll let a lot of people connect with me. I'll kind of investigate a little bit, but if they look legit, I'll let them connect. If they send me a message and they have a big spiel in there, oftentimes that's an unconnect. I disconnect from that person because I
right.
just
As
do
soon
not
as you connect,
respect
they
that.
send and hey Dave, we'd like for you to buy this franchise, and you'd be perfect for the.
Yeah.
Nope, I'm out. I
Yeah, I've gotten the franchise one a bunch
Yeah,
of times.
yeah. When I do, in fact, in my brain, the algorithm is teaching itself. AI is teaching itself. So I get some that are so stupid. Now I like to keep a clean feed.
Yeah.
I will report people if I think it's a fake account. They have 3 connections,
Yes,
and
I've
it's
done that too.
a way too attractive woman that's way too
Uh
young,
huh.
and no real background. I just go
Yeah.
ahead and I report them, and then I report the message they send as spam. LinkedIn says, "Oh no, we researched it. You're probably not going to like our answer, but it's fine." It's like,
Oh, really?
no, it's not.
Oh,
So I get the update on that. I I try to help the algorithm, but now I'm seeing more and more advanced, changing the words, changing the message, changing the timing. So I feel like the algorithm identified me as somebody because I report so many. They want to see if they can fool me. So I'm getting more of them. I'm 3 days a stretch, but there's lots of days I have two.
yeah. So one of the things I think, and I wanted to do a video on this, and I haven't done it yet, is in the social selling book, it talks about who comprises of your network on LinkedIn typically, and for the majority of people, and this is true of me too. The majority of your network is going to be people you work with currently and people you used to work with. And then, like, let's say at best you could hope for 20% are potential customers. Probably for most of us, our network, even the potential customers could be even smaller. Now, you in the negotiation world, that's a different story because I think the negotiation thing is a much broader topic. But for me in industrial sales,
Yeah,
the amount of people I'm trying to reach. So
yeah. There's a
I
very small group of PLC buyers.
yeah. So and then like all these companies, the previous company I worked for, it's in the social selling book, and it's so true. There's an automated platform, curated articles. You just go and you check the boxes on the ones you want. It schedules them automatically on the calendar, and boom,
Oh,
boom, 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 boom. They're released, and I'm just like, a year or so ago, I said, I'm not doing this anymore. It's nobody's liking my posts except the people I work with, and I'm pretty sure no customers are looking this. And again, the algorithm, I think, totally knows what you're doing, so it doesn't even feed it up very much.
yeah,
And it's like okay, so that's when I started thinking about content on LinkedIn that was personal to me, and just to see, okay, like, let's just talk to the network, let's get me out, and let's see how that responds. And it's been really good, you know.
yeah.
So
A marketing professional told me last week that the algorithm knows when you're using a third party to post, to upload your videos. I'm going to upload this video at 9:30 on Tuesday, and it's watching the IP address.
yeah.
So what they said was LinkedIn, if you're using a third party to upload onto LinkedIn, you're probably doing it on Facebook and Instagram, and LinkedIn does not like competitive platforms. So
Mm,
what they suggested
makes
was
sense.
you have one computer where that your IP address, not the third party, where you upload into LinkedIn, so that LinkedIn goes, Dave is being a good boy. Dave is not using third parties. He's not going to Facebook and Instagram. Dave is giving LinkedIn his undivided attention. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me if you got demerits for using third parties and you got attaboys for using your own IP.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I personally haven't spent time really working on any other social network from a business perspective. I mean,
Is there anything out
you
there? I
know,
mean, Facebook and Instagram have an overlap. I mean, Facebook owns Instagram, but there are people who have both accounts and they're
yeah,
both social platforms with pictures and comments. But LinkedIn is where the business people are. There isn't a second place. I'm sure there are some on TikTok, but they're not really selling on TikTok. That's just, getting attention.
yeah. So you're not on TikTok, Mike?
No, my family is, my daughter and my wife.
I mean,
Ooh, my daughter. Oh,
you could probably
she
you could probably go viral with some negotiation tips on TikTok.
I but
It's a
see,
whole
I
different
have a hard
platform.
time condensing these. It's tough to take a $10 million deal and condense it down to 90, 30 seconds.
Yeah,
There's some depth
yeah.
there. But my daughter had some. She was trying to sell some stuff on Facebook Marketplace, and she had some gentleman my age send pictures of their
Mm,
private parts.
nice.
Man, they're in
Yeah.
trouble. Ooh, she found out where they worked. Hey, gentlemen in the
Wow.
audience, this is completely inappropriate. Do not. text a female pictures of your
Yeah.
private parts because they could get you in a lot of trouble. And one of them is married. And my
Mm.
daughter's like, I'm going to send this to his wife. And I'm like, ooh. Yeah, I don't do
There's
a
a
lot of other
juicy
social
story.
media.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Social media is it's a tricky business, and I do like the fact that LinkedIn has stayed primarily business, right? The um, and that's the challenge I face. And maybe you see this, and you made the comment earlier about the fact that one of your best posts ever was when you just posted a picture of you and your wife, and you guys were traveling somewhere,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
so,
we were in Rome and I joked about the 16th chapel we were seeing. The 16th it was in the background.
yeah,
And and I think I got 112 likes, I think, or emoji reactions. And I don't get that on a normal business post where I'm actually helping business people with their careers. This is just this personal little joke that I threw out there.
yeah. And I again, this is the part I struggle with. I don't mind being a little bit personal on LinkedIn, but I think that I try to feather that in as like, just some of the other stuff, right? I had a post about my son being in the hospital, and man, boom, same thing. It was like everybody commented on that, and it's funny is like I didn't even know. I mean, I knew it had a lot of views. I saw the comments, but for weeks and weeks and weeks afterwards, people would be. I'd just go somewhere and people like, "Hey, how's your son doing?" And so I know people watch this stuff. I know they don't comment as much as they see it. And the thing I like too is that if you are doing some of this work on LinkedIn, and I've said this to a lot of people, your stuff is working for you 24/7, right? Well, you're sleeping, your videos can be rolling and you don't realize it. And not that I'm talking about industrial controls. I mean, I could talk about automation all the time, but it's a little bit more about who I am as a person, and hopefully that if there's some experience there when they're thinking of what they need, they'll just reach out to me, right? And that it's
Yeah,
comfortable and they know I'm still alive.
right. And
you know
so everybody's got their fix of what they like to do in their downtime. Some people watch TV, some people read books. And so why not, if you don't have one thing that you really love to do more than anything else, and you have 5 minutes of downtime, why not try to generate some interest on an idea, on a product line, share some information just because you want to give
hmm
back.
yeah.
Um, it's LinkedIn makes it easy to do that. That's my social media, choice.
Yeah, and of course these videos get uploaded to YouTube, and so that's, I guess I'm kind of using YouTube, if you want to call that social media, but it's probably the repository for the full
Sure.
video,
Number
and then
two
everything
search
else.
engine in the world is YouTube, owned by Google. Number one search engine in the world.
I guess that makes sense. I did not know that. Yeah, did not know that. So hey, well, Mike, I think we've surpassed our time limit, but thanks, for joining me. I think this is great. I do want to get back into the class, and I talk to people about it all the time. So yeah, look
Love
forward to
to have
doing
you.
that.
We'll work hard to earn your business, Dave. I appreciate that, and thank you for letting me share with your audience and getting to know you better. And I hope your son continues to do better.
Yeah, he's doing pretty good. Thanks for asking.